Hey guys, this is James, and we're joined today for InBetweenIsode number 45. Once again, you were here a few episodes ago. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Meat. Good friends with James. We had, I can't remember what we had. We probably had some dark oolongs last time I was on. Probably woolies.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if did we have rogueways then?
Yeah, we did. We had.
That's probably
I think we did. I think that's right.
Yeah.
So, Meat is one of my friends that you mainly drink woolly oolongs. Is that right? It's probably.
That's definitely, that's my most prevalent go-to.
Yeah, so normally on these episodes I'm drinking raw pour and stuff, and I usually don't get the chance to drink woolly oolongs quite as much.
Yeah.
So it can be a little bit tricky to evaluate just because your palate's not totally adjusted to it. And so this is a woolly oolong that just got sent to me from China called the Clover Patch Oolong. But first we're going to brew one of your favorites.
It's the Phoenix Village Shui Xian from
Yunnan sourcing.
From Yunnan sourcing, right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, smells kind of nice actually.
Yeah. And so this is like one of your regular drinks, is that right?
Right. I enjoyed their rogueway for a while, and then I thought I'd change it up a bit, and Phoenix Village Shui Xian is very, very close to their rogueway, and it's very easy to go to.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, just right off of the rinse, we're smelling like a pretty strong aroma right now.
Yeah.
It's
what do you think?
It's definitely fairly lightly roasted, which I think tends to be the style that Yunnan sourcing goes for. And
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, actually, a lot of their recent collection is definitely a lot more. Well, I wouldn't say heavier, but heavier compared to this. So slightly more roasted than the Phoenix Village.
Okay, so a little bit more of that charcoal taste.
Yeah, definitely. So this has a little less the charcoal smokiness, and it has. You can actually taste the sweeter notes a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah. So
definitely.
We will get brewing. So that was the rinse. I'm using about 5 grams per 70 milliliters here. So we will just start brewing right now. All right. And so like what you might ask, like, why don't we just drink the Clover Patch Oolong straight off? Get Meat's opinion of it. But there's so many different factors that go into the brewing. It's like, this is like probably not your normal space where you drink tea.
That's true.
And so it's like...
It's also not my normal style of brewing.
Exactly.
Because, so I generally brew more tea and more in quantity at a time because I just like to fill a cup and keep it going at work.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a very practical way, I think, for work time brewing. I think a lot of people probably brew that way rather than continuously brewing little tiny cups of tea for like 30, 40 times during the day. It seems much more practical to do a few for just
That's
the
true.
amount of liquid that you get.
I agree.
Okay.
It's, all right.
Let's have a drink. Cheers.
Cheers.
So I'd say it has a very bright taste to it. A lot of those fruity notes that I would associate, sort of like dried fruit for me, is kind of like dried apricots, dried stone fruits are things that I usually associate with Louis.
That sounds right. That's definitely, very fruity. That definitely like a good level of sweetness.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The tea, for the most part, doesn't have too much bitterness. I think it hints at it a little bit, but it's still, for the most part, very sweet.
I must say, though, like, this style of brewing definitely brings out a kind of hidden flavor that you don't normally get when you're just brewing large amounts of tea.
Mm-hmm.
Also, drinking it kind of just hot.
Hot, yeah.
That brings out a good taste as well.
Mm-hmm. And so how would you say this for the most, well, I guess you kind of just described it, but you would say that this definitely tastes different than sort of your work time brew.
Yeah, yeah. It also feels, although I'm not sure if you have, but it feels like it's brewed a little darker, a little longer, a little stronger than what I normally do.
Yeah, I'd imagine that the amount of leaf that we're using per ounce of water is much higher.
That's true. You're
Yeah.
right, and that probably affects the taste.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say that the other Yunnan sourcing oolongs compared to this? Because I think you ended up buying quite a bit of this, yeah?
Yes, I originally got 100 grams of the Phoenix Shui Xian,
Okay.
and then I ended up ordering another 500 grams of the Phoenix.
That is a lot of tea.
That's a decent amount. But the great thing about Yunnan sourcing is, the price goes down significantly, so you get a better bang for the buck. And that's kind of the reason I like buying stuff from Yunnan.
Because you
can pick your favorite, and then you can get a lot of that. And at the same time, you can get small samples of other things.
So you sort of get a really nice bulk discount.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
once you figure out what you like, then you can order in huge quantities. And what tends to be your price range that you look at Yunnan sourcing?
So it varies. I don't like to go really high. I want to say, according to their offering, I'm just about average, which is anywhere from $8 to $10 for every 50 grams.
Okay. And then obviously as you go up in quantity, it goes down.
Yeah, it definitely is a significant amount of discount.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, Yunnan sourcing also has their own, weekend sale discounts.
Yeah,
so
so you
add
can-
that on top,
Mm-hmm.
and it's quite the value.
And sort of makes the shipping a more reasonable amount too, considering you're going to be paying $15-20 for shipping from China anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have to wait a decent amount,
Yeah.
decent amount of time. So it's kind of nice to have a good amount of tea
Mm-hmm.
going for a few months.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
So I'd say this infusion's even better. It gives even more defined sweetness. I'd say it's fuller in body. A lot of those mineral sort of rock tastes that you would get.
Definitely. Yeah, I find that the tea keeps on going for at least 3 or 4 brews, and this is definitely better in taste.
Right, and I'd imagine one of the differences between what we're doing here and sort of the office brewing also is that, like, under your office parameters, which you probably get fewer brews, but here I bet we could get more than 3 or 4, if I were to guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
if we were to
also,
extend the steep time and slowly and stuff, but we're also getting a lot less liquid, so it's sort of trade-offs, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, we're going to drink this third infusion, and then we're going to switch to the Clover Patch Oolong and see how that compares. So this one looks like, just judging from the color, it looks like the deepest color that we've gotten so far. So I'd expect it to be maybe the fullest, but perhaps hint a little bit even more towards the bitter and astringent.
Yeah. It tends to give out a good color, but sometimes it starts tasting leafy at the same time.
Okay, so sort of like spinachy.
Yeah, definitely, and so vegetably. And at that point, I stop kind of enjoying the brews as much as I do. So, but hey, let's try this.
Mm-hmm. Cheers.
Yeah, still good actually.
Yeah, this is really nice. I would definitely say that this is like a drinkable immediately sort of tea.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually going to dump the leaves here. So, I mean, you can tell that sort of like it goes and starts from sort of a browner color, the dry leaves, and then you can see it's very green. So we'll dump that out, and then we'll compare that later to the Clover Patch Oolong. So we are back, and we are going to be brewing up our second tea here, the Clover Patch Oolong. So new Gaiwan. Same batch of water. So, when you open this bag, did it sort of smell similar to what you're used to as far as wooies? The Clover Patch bag?
Yes, it did actually. It smelled closer to the Rogue Way that I had originally, that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was one of your favorites, right?
Yeah, but on a general category of all the Shui Xians I've had, it definitely comes very close to the Phoenix as well. Again, a good hint of sweetness within the aroma. So,
you want to smell that?
Yeah. Nice. I want to say it's a little more smoother than the Phoenix that we just had. Actually.
Yeah, if anything, the aroma is a little bit more intense, and that could be due to a number of factors, including the storage of the tea or whatnot. So
that's true.
We will find out soon enough.
Yeah. Also, an important thing to note is that the Phoenix that we just had was I have ordered it, and it's been about a month.
Okay.
Since I've ordered it. It's been in a pretty tight packaging, but yeah. I'm not sure if the length of the
another smell.
time affects it,
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely have some effect. And you've just been keeping it in the original Yunnan sourcing packaging?
Yes.
I mean, it's
definitely very convenient and handy that way.
Yeah, it smelled pretty well kept to me. The aroma was definitely still pretty strong, but if anything, the aroma on this one's even stronger.
It is.
And you can tell already that some of those
going
leaves are Yeah, exactly. So, let me have a smell.
Still the same strong aroma, actually.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more floral, but similar, I would say, for sure. I mean, these both fit squarely into sort of like your lightly roasted, can drink immediately wooey teas, as opposed to like the heavier, darker roast. And it looks like that color is a little bit darker. Correct me if I'm wrong, than what we were getting from the Phoenix.
That looks darker. You're right.
All right. Okay. You can give that
I'm
a second
excited to try this.
to cool down. Don't burn your tongue yet. All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Mm-hmm. It already feels a little more vegetable-y, actually.
Really?
So pretty early for me.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely is quite smooth, but I suppose I was expecting a slightly different kind of taste out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like, well, it's probably more consistent with the fact that it is a fairly light roasted tea.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you think it compares?
Compares, I would, on a personal, and this is very objective, but on a personal level, at the very first brew, I think I like the Phoenix Shui Xian better.
Okay.
Phoenix Village Shui Xian better. But we should try more.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I guess I would go a little bit the other way.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this tea tastes a little bit fuller, just in its body.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's giving a little bit more mouthfeel in like how it sort of interacts with like the top of your mouth, and I feel like the aftertaste is a little bit better. All those things can be a little bit tricky, but like you said, that's just the first infusion.
Right.
And I think you're right, though, that I think it definitely does veer a little bit more towards those vegetal flavors, and I tend to not like those too. So, curious to see how this compares, and that's even darker.
That is darker.
So this is brewing up a lot quicker than our Phoenix. By the way, just to clarify for you guys, the Phoenix tea is a wooey tea. It's a wooey oolong, but it's has Phoenix in the name. I think it's Phoenix Village or something like that.
It is. I'm guessing that's the region it comes from.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But it's, all right.
And I'm going to brew this once more. We can give it a hot second to cool down.
Look at how quickly the leaves are actually
expanding
and expanding compared to Phoenix, especially.
Yeah, and you know, for something like Puer or whatever, these sorts of quick comparisons might not be as indicative, because Puer can sometimes show its strength in like the 5th or 6th or even like the 10th infusion.
That's true.
But I think these woos are really fast brewing teas,
Yeah.
so we're going to get the good stuff out real quickly.
Yeah. First 3 brews tend to be,
Yeah.
you know, the significantly common good ones.
And so, cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.
So what do you think?
Definitely, I guess it tastes stronger. You mentioned that it's starting to brew quicker. It got darker. Slightly more on the bitter side.
Mm-hmm. So do you think... I would agree with that. I think this is veering more towards intense flavors, as opposed to... Even though we're using the exact same amount of leaf and virtually the same brewing technique, versus the first one tends to be a little bit lighter.
It's interesting to note that it's compared to the other, wheats that I've had from Yunnan sourcing. This one is still. It's very different from the Phoenix Shui Xian, but it's also very different from the other wheats that I've had that are heavily roasted and smoky, and yeah. This one is still very smooth.
Okay.
It's more on the bitter side.
Okay.
Of the taste, I think.
Okay, so why don't we drink this last one, and then you can tell me which one you would prefer.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So,
what do you think? I'm still tasting it out.
Yeah, my preferences would lead me to prefer the third tea, but I think that also tends to be more of my style, where I tend to like the fairly intense teas and stuff like that. It'd be interesting for you to try something like the Clover patch under sort of like more of your work time parameters, a little bit lighter, using a little bit less leaf. I'd be curious how you would like it then.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually, the original brew didn't kind of get me in, but as we progressed through the next couple of brews with the Clover patch, I think it feels like it's grown on me. I still, just because I'm so used to, I might just be a little more biased with Phoenix Village, but Clover patch is definitely growing on me already.
Okay.
And what I said at the very beginning is starting to change for me personally already.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll probably end up tossing these leaves back in the Gaiwan and brewing it out after the show. But about how would you... So the Phoenix Village, it sort of exists in that price range that you normally buy from, like $8 or $9 for 50 grams, right? Something like that. I think
so. It's very close, yes.
Yeah. And so how much would you place this in sort of like a similar price range for how much you'd be willing to pay for it?
I think
around there.
Excuse me, $8 for 50 grams would definitely be a fair price for Clover patch. What's interesting is that it gave you the hint of, me personally, it gave me the hint of like a more of a vegetable-y taste early on, but it stayed consistent throughout, and it stayed consistent as in it didn't become more vegetable-y early on. and it's still good. I feel like we could probably get a couple more brews out of this.
I definitely agree.
You know?
And I also
Good
think
brews.
we could get some good brews out of that Phoenix. And let's take a quick look at the leaf here. So you could see the leaves actually look fairly different. It kind of looks like, if we're to look at the clover patch, there's like some leaves that are more verdant versus darker and browner. So it leads me to kind of believe that this is some sort of blend, or there's been some sort of tweaking of the processing to get some leaves one way and some leaves another way. The Phoenix looks a little more
Consistent.
homogeneous, consistent. And like you said, I mean, like, this is the same amount of leaf, and the clover patch leaves have just expanded way, way more. So that's kind of striking too, taking a look at the wet leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure, like, I haven't compared a whole lot of leaves, but I definitely noticed that Phoenix Village doesn't expand as much compared to most other Wuis that I've had.
That's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it for this episode. So thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah. Thank you, Meat, for showing up again, lending your regular office brewing Wui expertise to the show.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.